Zhuge Liang. Recognized as the most accomplished strategist of his era, Zhuge has been annotated in the 36 stratagems. He's even been compared to the author of The Art of War, Sun Tzu. In contrast to the legends that surround his life, he displayed his wisdom mainly as a politician and statesman rather than in strategic military maneuver. His great intellect was recognized even while he lived in relative seclusion, earning himself the nicknames Crouching Dragon and Sleeping Dragon. He was a Confucian-orientated legalist, who's often depicted carrying a hand fan made of crane feathers, whilst also wearing a Taoist robe. Under his governance, Shu's agriculture and industry were developed greatly. He refused to indulge in the local elites and adopted strict but fair and clear laws. The locals built shrines to honour him, which they maintained for ages. Historically, he only played a small role in the Battle of Chibi. He did not predict or summon the winds, nor did he use the arrow borrowing trick. There was no rivalry between Zhuge Liang and Zhou Yu either. Zhuge did not attend Zhou's funeral, nor were Zhou's final words about Liang. His strongest points, apart from administration, was his ability to draw up battle plans, whereas situational strategy was in fact his weakness. The invention of the repeating crossbow is often accredited to him, but he in fact had nothing to do with it. He did, however, make improvements to the repeating crossbow. Interestingly, Pei Songzhi once said that if Zhuge Liang pledged himself to the Wei dynasty and displayed his capabilities, he would honestly not be Chen Shun or Sima Yi's match. Some believe that Zhuge chose not to serve in Wei because he felt he would just be another footnote compared to more capable men. His noble statue is still there, everlasting in history with his feather. Fate changed and the Han could hardly recover. Still, he wholeheartedly fought on, disregard the challenges. Zhuge Liang's father, Zhuge Gui, served under Han as an assistant officer in Mount Tai, and their clan was known to be influential. Zhuge Liang was born in 181 in Liangya Commandery, but his mother passed away when he was only 3. His father passed away when he was about 12, so he, his younger brother Zhuge Jun, and possibly their 2 older sisters, were raised by their uncle Zhuge Shu Han. Both the sisters married into notable families, with numerous relations in the area. Meanwhile, their eldest brother, Zhuge Jin, visited Liu Yang to study the classical texts. Zhuge Xuan was the administrator of Yuzhang Commandery, but they were all driven out in 195 after he died. They all went to live with their uncle's friend, Liu Bei. Liang was said to live in a place called Longzhong in Deng County, Nanyang Commandery, about 20 miles west from Xiangyang City. He grew to be a tall man who enjoyed reciting a popular folk song from his birthplace at Shandong. Whilst in the province, he farmed the fields and lived a simple peasant life, but also travelled the area to study, constantly singing songs describing higher ambitions. He took the habit of comparing himself to a famous sage minister from the past, and another certain prominent military commander, but few people took him seriously. He developed close relationships with the influential locals that did take him seriously, such as Zhu Xu and Sui Zhuping. Zhuge and Xu Xu travelled around together, and soon met Meng Jian and Shi Dao, who then joined them on their journey. Zhuge once told his companions that they shall serve as commandery administrators or inspectors, but when the trio asked him what his plans were for the future, he remained silent. When Meng Jian decided to head back north to his hometown, Zhuge tried to dissuade him but failed. He returned home regardless. At this time, he also met with Sima Hui, who compared Zhuge to a sleeping dragon. The other well-known intellectuals he would go on to befriend were Pang Tong's uncle Pang Digong and Huang Qiyan. The latter once told Zhuge, "I heard that you were seeking a spouse. I have an ugly daughter with yellow hair and a dark complexion, but her talent matches yours." Zhuge agreed, and so soon married Huang Yueying. Yueying was the maternal niece of Liu Biao and Lady Tai, because her mother was Lady Tai's sister. Initially, because Zhuge Liang had no sons, he adopted Zhuge Xiao, who was Zhuge Jin's son. Xiao served under Shu, but died relatively young. Liang went on to have at least 2 more sons. Zhuge Zhan also served as a general in Shu, but he was killed in action during the conquest of Shu by Wei. The younger son, Zhuge Huai, merely lived as a commoner during the Jin dynasty. When Liu Bei was residing in Xinyi, taking shelter under Liu Biao, he met with Sima Hui, who recommended Zhuge Liang and Pang Tong as elites that Liu should try to recruit. When Zhu Xu also recommended the talents to Liu, he was told that he needed to meet Zhuge in person. Liu Bei met with him on 3 personal visits and was able to recruit him in 207. Pei Songxi claims Zhuge went to visit Liu Bei first. It's believed that Zhuge first approached him to display his wisdom, whereafter Liu Bei visited 3 times to have further discussions. As their friendship deepened, Zhang Fei and Guan Yu voiced their discontent to Liu Bei. "Me having Kongming is like a fish having water. I hope you gentlemen shall not talk of this again." They did not once complain to Liu Bei about Zhuge Liang after this, despite there probably being more visits before Zhuge decided to officially offer his services. Chen Shu recorded the details of the private conversation between him and Liu Bei in his house in Longzhong. Liu Bei said, "The Han dynasty is in decline. Villainous officials usurped the power while the emperor was forced into exile. I may be unworthy in both strength and virtue, but I still want to uphold justice and righteousness in the empire. However, I am not intelligent and shrewd enough, which is why I have repeatedly suffered setbacks and ended up in my current situation. Nevertheless, I have neither deviated from my initial intentions nor given up on my ambitions. Sir, what do you think I can do?" Zhuge proposed the Longzhong Plan, which forms the basis of the establishment of the Shu Han state. In essence, the plan required Liu Bei to gain control over Jing and Yi provinces and to form a strategic alliance with Sun Tzu so as to secure a viable base for staging attacks against Cao Cao. After the death of Liu Bei, during the lead-up to the Battle of Chibi, Zhuge Liang galloped south with Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun and Liu Bei to escape from Cao Cao. Xu Shu asked if he could leave Liu Bei's service on the way, after learning that Tao's forces had captured his mother. Lu Su also arrived in Jing to offer condolences to Liu Bei, but Liu Kong had already surrendered by now, and Liu Bei had fled. He went to see Liu at Changban, then followed him to Xiaku. Liu Bei wanted to join up with Wu Ju in the distant Kangwu commandery, but Lu Su dissuaded him from this, instead offering him to join forces with his lord, Sun Tzu. Liu Bei was pleased with this, and so sent Zhuge Liang to secure the alliance. During his talks with Sun Tzu in Chaisang, he claimed that Liu Bei's forces were about 10,000 strong, and were also supported by Liu Shi with his 10,000 recruits from Jiangxia. These numbers may have been exaggerated, but it displayed they had organized a large force, albeit one that still stood no chance in open battle against Wei. Wu's chief clerk Zhang Zhao wanted to surrender in fear of the boasted 800,000 Wei troops. But on separate occasions, Lu Su analyzed the political situation, the chief commander of Wu, Zhou Yu, analyzed the weakness in Cao Cao's army, and Zhuge Liang pleased Sun Tzu with his arguments. He was able to read Sun Tzu's personality, and decided to provoke him by telling him to surrender if he was not strong enough to resist Wei. He further explained that even though Liu Bei was even weaker than him, he would still fight to the death instead of surrendering. He again mentioned their small but significant force, whilst also highlighting that Cao Cao's army was not as strong as it appeared to be. Sun Tzu then chopped off a corner of his desk to display what will happen to anyone that argues for surrender, before sending Zhou Yu, Cheng Pu and Lu Su with 30,000 men to go with Zhuge Liang to Liu Bei's aid. During the Battle of Chibi, a frontline subordinate of Zhou Yu's, Huang Gai, initiated a fire attack that obliterated the incoming Wei navy. Zhuge Liang observed the follow-up attacks led by Liu Bei and Zhou Yu, the tropical diseases that infected the northerners, and the unfamiliar environment which exhausted their morale. He said that even a powerful arrow at the end of its flight cannot penetrate a silk cloth. After this decisive victory, the first phase of the Longzhong Plan was complete. Zhuge was appointed as military advisor of the household and put in charge of governing Lingling, Guiyang and Changsha commanderies. Their main focus at this point was collecting taxes to fund the military. He didn't participate much during Liu Bei's takeover of Yi province. He was left behind to look after Jing with Guan Yu, Zhang Fei and Zhao Yun, before leading separate armies of reinforcements with the latter two when Liu Bei's true invasive intentions were discovered by Liu Zhang. At Chengdu, he was appointed as military advisor general by Liu Bei, whilst being granted permission to administer his own personal office. Whenever Liu Bei embarked on campaigns, Zhuge Liang remained in Chengdu to keep feeding a steady flow of troops and provisions to the front line. In 221, Taiping usurped the throne and became Wei's founding emperor. Many Shu subordinates urged Liu Bei to do the same, but he initially refused. He was eventually persuaded by Zhuge Liang, who then became Shu's chancellor. He was put in charge of the new imperial agency and set up the functions of the head of the imperial secretariat. After Zhang Fei's death, he was further appointed as the colonel of director of retainers. Liu Bei was soon defeated at the Battle of Yiling by Lu Xun. An inseparable element of this battle from the novel and the video games is the Stone Sentinel Maze, an array of rocks and boulders thought to be conjured up by Zhuge Liang. They are supposedly based on a set of symbols used in Taoist cosmology which represent the principles of reality. The supposed ruins of the array exist on the Yufu shore near Baidi Cheng. In folklore, when the river rises in the summer, the formation is hidden, but in autumn the array resurfaces, with the rocks and boulders intact in their original positions. Historically, there is no mention of the maze during the battle or after Liu Bei retreated to Baidi Cheng. Xu Sheng, Pan Zhang, and Song Xian all thought Liu Bei was in reach and wanted to pursue. When asked for his opinion by Chuan, Lu Xun replied. Zhu Ran and Luo Tong also spoke up. They all warned of Tao Pi's thousands of troops and other motives, whilst predicting an incoming invasion from Wei. They were summoned back to Wu, whilst Zhuge Liang was summoned from Chengdu to Yong'an to meet with Liu Bei. You're 10 times more talented than Tao Pi, and capable of both securing the country and accomplishing our great mission. If my son can be assisted, then assist him. If he proves incompetent, then you may take over the throne. Zhuge tearfully replied that he'd do his utmost to serve with unwavering loyalty until his death. Liu Bei's statement on his deathbed has caused controversies, with some believing Zhuge had the authority to take over the throne literally. Others think it was a test of sorts towards Zhuge Liang's loyalty, and some believe that if the situation demanded, it authorized Zhuge to replace Liu Shan with other living sons, like Liu Yong or Liu Li. It was not rare for historians to forget what wording was used, even if they were present when the words were spoken. Sometimes, different opinions of what was said led to debates. Other times, the historian created their own version of events as a representation, taking into account the characteristics and temperament of the speaker in order to maintain as much authenticity. For this reason, I don't take the quote all too seriously, and personally think Zhuge was only asked to look over the new empire in Liu Shan. To me, the only real evidence is the fact that Zhuge never dethroned him. When Liu Shan did assume the throne, he granted Zhuge Liang the title of Marquis of Wu District and created an office for him as the chancellor. He also soon became the governor of Yi Province, the region which included most of Shu Han's territory. Directly managing the bureaucrat offices as chancellor and the common people as governor meant all the state affairs were in the hands of Zhuge Liang. His independent office, which housed independent subordinates, meant his authority was relatively separated from that of the emperors. Liu Shan treated Zhuge Liang as a father figure as he was the regent. All of Shu Han's affairs, trivial or vital, were directly handled by Zhuge Liang. Liu Shan was just a nominal leader, although he was educated and supervised by Zhuge. This arrangement continued until Zhuge Liang's death. Some theorize on why Zhuge never returned authority to Liu Shan. One thought is that he supported a situation similar to the early period of the Han dynasty, where the emperor indirectly led the country whilst the chancellor actually handled the affairs in his name. In this way, if problems occurred, the emperor could speak out against the chancellor rather than being blamed himself. Another thought is that Zhuge was stubborn in thinking that Liu Shan was not experienced enough to handle state affairs, hence he decided to do things himself to make sure no mistakes happened. The complicated situation in Shu at the time adds to this belief, as Liu Shan could not handle such challenging problems, but Zhuge Liang could. Poverty was widespread, but Yi's wealthy families led extravagant lives. Economical, political reform was desperately needed, as unrestrained by the previous government, the upper class freely exploited the common people. Zhuge made it clear that the core value of his policy was to stabilize and improve the lives of all the people. This was important to enhance the people's loyalty towards Shu in order to properly support the future campaigns against Wei. His policies had been in place since Liu Bei's time and continued into the time of Liu Shan. They resulted in the purging of corrupt officials, lower taxes for the peasantry, restrictions were placed on the nobles' abuse of power. Forced labour and military mobilization was also reduced and rescheduled to not conflict with agriculture. And the Tuncheon system was used extensively, which massively increased food production output. This was further boosted by the rebuilding and repairing of many agriculture dikes, which allowed Shu Han to sustain her future military activities. Salt, silk and steel. These three notable products of the Shu region attracted Zhuge Liang's attention. Under his recommendation, Liu Bei set up departments which specialized in their management. Wang Lian directed the offices first, before Zhang Yi took over. This led to the salt production becoming highly prosperous, where it generated an important income for the government. A well-known local metalsmith called Fu Yuan was entrusted in metallurgy research and managed to improve the crafting techniques for steel weapons. Silk production also grew significantly, and Chengdu soon became known as the City of Silk. By the end of the Shu regime, it had accumulated 200,000 pieces of silk in their national treasure. Zhuge Liang's family plantation also had 800 mulberry plants for silkworm feeding. As the Han dynasty collapsed, monetary systems were in severe turbulence, so the three kingdoms needed to establish their own individual currency. Under Liu Bei's advice, Liu Bei and Zhuge Liang were able to successfully implement and circulate a new currency within their borders. It even became popular in Jing province. Meanwhile, Cao Cao, Tao Pi, Tao Rui, and Sun Quan's monetary reforms faced many difficulties and produced limited results. Nominal rule for the monarch, with direct rule by the chancellor, together with rule of laws, are two important policies of Zhuge Liang's legacy. He enacted a legalist policy with strict but fair and transparent laws, which restricted the power of the wealthy families. The legal code was written by Zhuge, with Fa Zheng, Liu Bei, Li Yan, and Yi Ji, shortly after Liu Bei first entered Yi province. Zhuge Liang dutifully upheld his legal orders, which punished the high-ranking Li Yan, Liang's close friend Ma Su, and even demonstrated the punishments on himself. The punished magistrates Li Yan and Liao Li still regarded Zhuge Liang highly and believed he would re-employ them once their sentence was served. Throughout the years, Zhuge inspired a model moral code by living a strict and stoic lifestyle. He owned no excessive assets, refrained from luxurious spending, and relied almost entirely on his government salary. This caused his magistrates to follow suit. Deng Zhi, Fei Yi, Jiang Wei, and Zhang Yi all strictly followed the law and the moral codes. This enabled Chu's government to maintain a high level of transparency, allowing them to arguably perform as the best model for rational rule out of the three kingdoms. The incorruptibility of Zhuge Liang and his associates is what kept Shu from falling, disregard the heavy spending caused by future campaigns. Many were happy with the new government, despite the strict laws, although some noble families thought they were cruel and exploitative. It's thought that they were upset about his over-strictness, but at the same time they respected him, so they encouraged his missions against Wei, but only so they could return to abusing power and manipulating public opinion. Education and recruiting talents was another policy he paid strong attention to. He created the position of Aid of Learning Encouragement, which many locals took on, but Xiao Zhu held it for a very long time. Under him studied the notable historian Chen Shu, author of the San Guoji. Zhuge Liang would go on to create a training facility called the Great Education Residence, which housed many Confucian textbooks. Many reading book residences were also established in Chengdu and the front line. They functioned as places for discussion to cultivate talented people for recruitment. Zhuge lavishly praised Yao Tian, who recommended many talents from Guanghan district. Just before Liu Bei's death in 223, he agreed upon the importance of the Shu-Wu alliance. When the southern commanderies in Nanzhong took Liu Bei's death as a chance to rebel, Zhuge Liang did not send any troops. Instead, he focused on rebuilding the alliance. He sent Deng Zhi and Chen Zhen to make peace with Wu, then established regular envoys to improve the relationship between the two states. With the alliance rekindled, he could now focus on uniting Shu once more, which was necessary to fulfill their objective of restoring the Han and defeating the Tao usurpers. Zhuge feared that if they marched north before pacifying the south, the peasants would press towards Chengdu in his absence. By the springtime of 225, the southern regional clans Yong, Gao, Zhu, and Meng had taken control of many cities. When the Shu expedition was marching south, Ma Su suggested to Zhuge to try and win the hearts of the Nan Man to rally their support rather than suppress them with military. This advice was heeded, so Zhuge famously captured and released the rebel leader Meng Huo 7 times until he genuinely surrendered. The tale of 7 captures is questioned by many, but either way, for the rest of Zhuge Liang's regency, the Nan Man people would be key contributors to the Shu campaigns against Wei. It was now time for Zhuge Liang to prepare a large-scale invasion against Wei. He moved to Hanzhong, then wrote the first Shu Shi Biao to Liu Shan in 227. Within it included the reasons to invade Wei and personal advice on how to govern in Zhuge's absence. Many have cast their doubts on the second Shu Shi Biao by not believing it was written by Zhuge Liang. One discrepancy within the second text is that it mentions the death of Xiao Yun, who died 1 year after the text was written. Initially, Zhuge Liang contacted Meng Da. Although he hated him for his behaviour, he feared he would one day become a threat to Shu. Zhuge was able to incite him into a rebellion, but Sima Yi's swift response saw the Shu forces driven back before Meng Da was surrounded and executed. From the years 228 to 234, Zhuge launched a total of 5 northern expeditions, all of which failed except one. During the first campaign, Zhuge Liang rejected Wei Yan's Ziwu Valley plan. Xiao Yun and Deng Zhi's decoy units were defeated by Tao Zhen. Anding and Tianshui commanderies did defect, but they were later recaptured by Wei, and Ma Su was defeated by Zhang He at Jieting. Zhuge ordered for a full retreat to Hanzhong, where he executed Ma Su and took full responsibility for the failure. The second campaign was stopped by Hao Zhao, who bravely defended Chenkang Castle with 1,000 men. Zhuge was outlasted and had to retreat when he ran out of supplies, but Wang Shuang pursued him, so was killed in an ambush. The third campaign was successful. Chen Shi found victory at the Battle of Jianwei, which then led to Shu's conquer of Wudu and Yinping commanderies. Zhuge led his army to back up Chen Shi, which forced Guo Huai to retreat. Wei Yan was then able to defeat Guo Huai and Fei Yao, which triggered Tao Rui to initiate a large-scale invasion of Shu. Sima Yi was ordered to lead an army from Jing province to join up with Tao Zhen in an attack against Hanzhong. To answer this new threat, Li Yan was sent by Zhuge with 20,000 reinforcements. They stopped the Wei army from passing through Ji Valley. Tao Rui was forced to order for a retreat, so Zhuge Liang returned to Chengdu, where he was rewarded by Liu Shan. Zhuge Liang's invention, the wooden ox, was used in his fourth campaign, which helped with the transportation of supplies. They took control of Mount Qi and enlisted Qi Bineng, but Wei forces led by Sima Yi were on their way. Zhuge sent half of his army to attack Guo Huai, Fei Yao and Dei Ling, where they found victory, before being ordered to collect the harvest from the area. When they returned to the mountain, Zhuge Liang pulled back, using the terrain as a natural barrier. They encountered Sima Yi's army, who sent Niu Jin forward with a light cavalry force, but the armies did not engage. The standoff ended when Zhuge took control of the hills in the north and the south, whilst using the river as a natural barrier. Taunting soldiers infuriated Sima Yi to send his men forward, which led to Zhang He's death in battle. Zhuge Liang eventually retreated to Shu, most likely due to lack of supplies, but the Book of Jin argues that Sima Yi decimated Shu's camps, which is what forced them into retreat. The fifth expedition was decided at the Wuzhang Plains in the year 234. 100,000 Shu troops marched through the Ji Valley, then camped at the plains. In preparation for this campaign, Zhuge constructed an extremely huge storage facility. He boosted his supply lines by using the Tunshan system and the wooden ox, which had been improved upon, becoming known as the flowing horse. Sima Yi soon engaged them in a skirmish, then initiated a night raid on their camp, but Tao Rui ordered him to hold his ground, so the battle became a stalemate. Zhuge taunted Sima numerous times, and even sent him women's accessories and clothing, but he did not attack, not because he didn't want to, but because Tao Rui would not allow it. Zhuge exhausted all of his energy on military matters big and small, which became a strain on his health after 100 days. He eventually fell seriously ill, and eventually died in camp at the age of 53, whereafter his men burnt down the camps and retreated. Sima Yi had learned of his rival's death from civilians, so led a force to give chase. When Jiang Wei and Yang Yi turned around with their soldiers and readied for battle, the overcautious Sima Yi retreated, fearing it was a trap and that Zhuge Liang had not actually died. Sima Yi observed the old Shu camp and noticed it had been hastily taken down. He soon concluded that Zhuge Liang had in fact actually passed away, and so led his troops to pursue once again. After marching for a while, he asked civilians about Zhuge Liang and heard of a popular saying, "A dead Zhuge scares away a living Sima." To this he laughed and said, "I can predict the thoughts of the living, but not the thoughts of the dead." All in all, the northern expeditions killed several notable Wei generals and captured 2 small commanderies, but they failed to meet their strategic goal. Zhuge Liang's limitations in commanding an army, the rough terrain, and the tough enemies resulted in his failure. He was an excellent military organizer, but not an outstanding military commander. Yes, he could properly lead an army, but could not conduct complex and deceptive moves. It's argued that Zhuge Liang was fully aware of the difficulties he faced and his own weaknesses, but pressed on anyway for 3 reasons. He sincerely wanted to restore the Han dynasty, and so never gave up on his ultimate goal. The continued state of war against Wei maintained the martial law in Shu, which Zhuge used to control the nobility. Finally, Shu was the weakest of the 3 kingdoms. By preemptively striking, they could lower the chance of being invaded whilst expanding their territory. These moves did not guarantee success, but it's better than doing nothing and withering away. Zhuge Liang has been praised in being so far-sighted, in recognizing his relentless attacks against a stronger enemy when necessary for his own kingdom's survival. In accordance to his dying wish, he was buried on Mount Dingjun in a simple tomb and with a modest funeral, with no expensive material or luxuries. After his death, the people checked his residence to find it had no luxurious assets. This verified his earlier claim that he lived a stoic life. The locals deeply mourned his passing. Initially, this was carried out wherever they decided, as no official temple nor legal worship protocol for Zhuge Liang had been established. This upset the people, and so in 263, a temple was built near his tomb in Mianyang. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.